Alright, so I got this through here, and it doesn't reach as far as you want it to go. This is going to be your quick disconnect for when, I believe, when you disconnect the FEL from the tractor. I don't think I'm ever going to be removing mine except for when I'm doing maintenance on it, so it's not like it's something I'm going to be removing all the time like I would the backhoe. So I'm not super concerned about it. It'll just be something I've got to be aware of. So I'm going to probably strap this just to this bottom hydraulic line and be fine with that. And then these are going to have to come up. I'm going to have to get these to the fuse box. I was hoping to be easy to get it to the battery. I don't know. We'll figure that out. That's not that big of a deal. But this one, I think I'm just going to zip tie it to some hydraulic lines back here. I'll zip tie it to here, and it'll be up out of the way. I'll put it up in here. These are not movable, so that's what I'm going to do with that. And I got plenty of zip ties. So what I'm going to do, zip tie in two places here. I'm going to do it prior to the bend. And I'm going to do it after the bend. And I'm not going to get the camera in there to show you it, and it's pretty self-explanatory. If you're this far, then you kind of aren't afraid of doing much of your own work, but I do want this to plenty of place, so I need to kind of give it a little bit more. That should be good. Now let me show you how I ran this. So I have it zip tied here. I'm going to do another zip tie, keep it against this hydraulic line, probably this top one here anyways. I ran it underneath the bracket, up underneath the bracket here, and then in here what I did was I ran it up under here, and then I could reach my hand and I can grab it through the other side of this bolt here, and then from there I'm able to get, let me get my flashlight. And then I can reach down in there, and that's basically the bottom of the where the floorboard is. And I followed that wire loom, and then I brought it up, and then I shoved it through where the wire loom comes into the fuse box. And then what I'm going to do is just buy a fuse tap, and then that's how I'll run the power. So that'll be pretty easy and inexpensive. And then I'll be done with the wiring for the night, and then I'll be waiting. I'll hook the loader back up and measure out for some hydraulic lines and get those ordered up. So that's where we are. Alright, so what I decided to do for my fuse was I'm just going to tap in a little fuse, just to add a circuit in. And this was a 10 amp fuse on this originally, so that's what I'm going to use this time as well. So I just dropped it down there. Anyway, so what I need to do is find, I'm just going to see which one of these 10 amp spots I can use. I don't know if this is a good ground or not, but so what I'm going to do first is find a spot using a ground that I know. Obviously, if you have a voltmeter, you can use a test light also. My light bulbs are broken, my test light, that'd be much quicker since I don't really care what the voltage is. So that doesn't work. Let me. Alright, so the engine, so it looks like these might all be switched. We'll check in a second here. Alright, so those I think are all switched. So let's do that. So that's 12, that's 8. Interesting. So I don't care if the tractor's running or not, if this was to work. These are all switched, obviously. I'm gonna run the tractor for a second. Alright, so those were all 8 and 9 volts. I don't know why they're not 12 volts. It should be enough to run this little solenoid though. I'm not so worried about it. I'll just use any one of those and tap into it. So if you're not familiar with these, all it is it's just a little fuse that you can add. So the top one here will be for the fuse. This one here is going to be for your fuse link. And then that's the way that it works. It's pretty simple, and it works great for this type of application where it doesn't really matter. And then we'll probably have to pull the ground wire back out, and then I'll probably attach that to the grounding strap on the engine or someplace else. I don't know yet, but that's kind of the plan right now. I'm just stripping this down. I'm going to cut that, so I'll pull this back out just so I can get the ground wire back out, and then I'll pull it back through. Alright, so that's all I need inside here is just the, and then I'll cut it here and strip it. Alright, so I just have one update that I'll throw in the middle of the other video. My ground point that I had used before, this is a ground, it's just not a very good ground. So what I ended up doing was, you've got on the block here, you've got a direct spot on the block here, and then you actually got the grounding strap for the block here. I used this one, it was a little easier to get to. There's a lot more connections on this one, so this one I just had to reconnect the clamp to, so it was a lot easier. So my ground wire comes from here, behind here, and then I have a little connector that's on the ground. So other than that, that's the change that was made. And then I'll button this all back up. Alright, so I'm just going to cut it here. So I'm just going to, actually, you know what, I'm going to give me some more slack here. I'm going to cut it here. Of course, I looked at my tracking today for the grapple. It's not going to be here for another day. It's really going to slow this down. I don't want to order my hoses until I have a grapple, because I don't want to make 2 trips. So sometimes I'll put a piece of heat shrink over that helps hold it, but I think that'll be okay. Alright, so like I said, I don't think it matters which one this is using, so I'm just going to pull a fuse. Let me find the 10 amp that I dropped. Alright, so add a 10. Add a 10. Alright, that's it. So now I need to move on to the ground. All that looks like when it's done is it just sits in there like that, and then you have your original spot back, and you've essentially added a circuit in there really quickly. So then we'll move to the ground. Obviously it's an engine, so there's a grounding strap. You can go right to the block. There's that's a good ground. I'm sure there's other areas that are grounded on here that you could probably get to. That might be a ground, but I won't use that. That's attached to the fuel filter. So I'll probably just put something on it, put it on the grounding strap. Let's see here if it's easily accessible. If it's too difficult, I'll use someplace else. Let's see. So I'm going to see. Just checking continuity of where there's ground. So this is actually ground here. That's not. That should be. That's not. So this, you can just test continuity. This is probably, but it's painted, so you're not going to get a good ground off of it. So all this stuff is grounded. Oh, it's funny. That's not grounded to the actual. And I might just use this one here then. So you can see what I was doing. So what I was doing was just ground strap here, and then this one here is the ground. So that's easy. I'm just going to use this one. I'll grab a socket. Looks like it's a pin, which of course I was using last night. Alright, so I just have one update that I'll throw in the middle of the other video. My ground point that I had used before, this is a ground, it's just not a very good ground. So what I ended up doing was, you've got on the block here, you've got a direct spot on the block here, and then you actually got the grounding strap for the block here. I used this one, it was a little easier to get to. There's a lot more connections on this one, so this one I just had to reconnect a clamp to, so it was a lot easier. So my ground wire comes from here, behind here, and then I have a little connector that's on the ground. So other than that, that's the change that was made. And then I'll button this all back up. So this is a 2019 tractor, so it's the 1819, so I've got the yellow tabs. Put this back on, should just clip in, slides forward into, oh, I gotta do it all at the same time. Slides forward into place. There we go. This goes in, twist lock. That's done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hook the bucket back up. Once the bucket's hooked back up, then I need to measure out what I need for hose lengths, and then I got to do my last hose length once I get the grapple in. I'm just going to check, make sure that that solenoid is working before I get too far along in the process, but I'm pretty sure it's going to. So pretty much all you do is take your brick here. It only plug in one way. And then remember, this is mounted up underneath. And this was the reason for this, but it's accessible where I have it. We'll zip tie this up and seal it up a little bit. So if we turn the tractor on, we should hear it. So we get a click, so it's working. Also, this solenoid has a red light, so you'll see. So when that's active, that's when we will be using the grapple, and then when it's released, the grapple won't work. So anyways, that's what the button will do. So you can see I'm just pushing the button. So that's grapple movements left and right, and then that's your curl and dump. So, and that's basically what's going to happen, open and close. So that's how that will work. So now you can kind of see the position of where I put that. That diverter goes right there. Like I said, I got to get shorter bolts for that still tomorrow. I'll get that, and then I'll figure out the hoses and stuff once the grapple gets here. So if you saw, then when I put this on, the way it comes from the factory, this was facing upwards like this. I wanted to face this way. When I pulled it off of the diverter, this comes out. You'll also want to loosen this up just so you can get a little bit of slack. There's a little stop in there for the cable, but you should just be able to push this out. Just pay attention to your orientation. Flip that 180 degrees. Slide that back in, and it should slide right back in there, not give you any hassle. And then now you can plug it in this way, and that'll be facing down. This way, and that'll be facing down. And that's how you can do that. So now it'll be plugged in that way. So one step it'll be hard to show on the tractor is I'm going to shorten the cable that goes to the relay. All it is 2 wires, so I cut it where I needed to cut it. So on the tractor side, I'll have this. I'll cut this back, and then I'll just put those 2 wires back in the spot. That way I don't have to fold up this, there's like 5 feet of extra wire, so I'm just gonna shorten that myself, and it'll be all right.